Hi, my name's Katrina. Welcome to my studio and to my channel. Today we're going to be looking at St. Petersburg White Nights paints and doing a swatch out and comparing my full pans to the tubes that I have. So the full pans I have, these I collected over a period of time, like a couple of years. So this is a self-selected set. I really do like working with White Nights paints. I think their quality for price is excellent, and so far I've had no problems with my pan paints and light fastness with my St. Petersburg paints. So I love them because I can travel with them, I'm not precious about them, I swash them around, I just use them for all sorts of things, and they help me get my brush miles and my experience up. So these are the full pans that I'll be swatching out. Now, I also have a set of the 12 tubes. Now, this was a set that I've bought in preparation for a mixing, a colour mixing class that I'll be giving hopefully in the next couple of weeks. I might even do some shorts of that on YouTube in the coming weeks as well. Now, I've done this from the perspective of people having a fairly basic beginner's set, and we'll go over how we mix different water split primaries and some of the other things. So keep your eye out for that. I'll let you know when I release some of those videos. So some of the colours are the same, some of the colours are different, and I'll just be looking and seeing how they compare. We do have one standout difference, which is cerulean blue. Now most of them I've actually pre-squeezed into a little palette, but when we get to the cerulean blue, I'm going to squeeze that out for you on film. We have an issue with this. So anyway, stick around and hopefully you enjoy a little bit of swatching out. So I'm just going to reposition my camera. Okay. Right. So we're going to start with the pan paints. Now, I've been using White Nights for probably 3 years or so, and I started with pans with them, and I really do love them. I think that they're an excellent paint brand for the price point. After I got some slightly better quality paints, I can see a difference, but these just do the job that I need them to do, which is not worry about wasting paint on practice. So first colour we're swatching out is the lemon, which is a PY3. This is they classify it as a transparent, so it's a slightly cooler yellow. As we can see, a good standard cool yellow. The next yellow I have is Indian Gold. This is somewhat close to, I guess, a Quin Gold in other brands. So this is a PY150 with a PR101. This is classified as a transparent, and as you can see, this is quite a warm yellow. And it goes from that quite sort of deep colour and dilutes down into quite a lovely warm yellow. Now this is a red, which I guess is more technically an earth red. Not a name that I have any idea how to pronounce. You could probably all have a great laugh at my inability. So this is a pigment PR102, so one of the classic earth red pigments. This is a semi-opaque red. Again, I would classify this as sort of a warm red, but quite an earthy red. I find this a beautiful practical landscape red. And then we have Titan red, which is really an orange, PO36. And this is classified as transparent. I'd possibly call it more semi-transparent. But again, this is a really great mixing red. I find this can be quite useful. Particularly when I want to warm up warm tones. And then next on the list we have Ruby. So this is a classic, I guess more of a mid-red, so a PR170. This is classified as transparent and staining, and yes, it is staining. And as I say, on a palette that I stick in my bag and carry in all sorts of places, travel with it. I paint with my niece, you know, when she was about 3, 4, we sat down and we painted with these paints, you know, sitting at the airport, things like that. You know, I'm just not precious about these colours, and that's why I love them. So my paints actually have all sorts of weird random additives in them. There's the odd bit of dog hair, there's some, they might have sand blowing in them, there's just don't be precious, get out there and paint. So this is magenta, a beautiful, beautiful, cool, vibrant PR122. So this is transparent, and I would probably also classify it as staining, or at least semi-staining. No, I think this is staining. As I can see, really, really vibrant, great for fun little florals and things like that. And then one of my favourite blues, this is our Indanthrene blue, a PB60. So this is a transparent, this is our quite a deep blue, leans a bit closer to the violets. Now I don't have a violet in White Nights paints. I'm sort of fairly happy with the violets I can mix with magentas and the blues that I have. So as you can see, there's a really lovely range of blues that you can get with this pigment, but you really get that punchy value. Now, next is my favourite blue. Well, I don't know. Blues are hard. I love all blues. That's why I have so many of them. This is the Cerulean blue, a classic PB35. There's not much left in this pan. I'm sort of working into the corners to get a little bit on my brush. I use this and I use this. I love the greys you can mix with cerulean. I love it for skies. I love its granulation. So this is a semi-opaque, granulating, non-staining. And I absolutely love this colour. Now the next colour is Azure PB15. So this is a slightly newer. I actually have two pans that are both called, one's called Azure and one's called Azure Blue. Now this version of Azure is the newer version, and this is just a PB15, which would be your phthalo blue, and as you can see, intense, strong, transparent, highly staining blue. So as you can see, by having my Azure and my magentas, I've got the colours that I need to mix violets as I need them. And then if I need them to be more muted, I can certainly use something like the indanthrene. If I want something that's leaning closer to lavender, I can mix with the cerulean. So that's kind of why I chose these particular blues. So the blue I am missing, which is quite surprising for me given that I love it so much, I don't actually have an ultramarine in the pans with White Nights. So this is my next colour of Azure. Now this was the first Azure I bought, and mostly because I was newer at watercolours and it was like, oh, this is a pretty colour, and it is a pretty colour. It's a convenience mix. Beautiful, but I really don't use it very much at all. This is called Azure Blue, and I guess it's like an ocean colour, a PB15-3 and a PG7. So it's a mixture of phthalo blue and phthalo green, really. Beautiful, intense. Look, if I need to brighten a green up, this certainly does the job. You know, you can throw it around. It makes for beautiful, beautiful colours. Vibrant, bright. I don't actually use it very much. My nieces love it. They think it's a gorgeous colour. And hey, if it gets people painting, what a great reason to have a colour. PG7, emerald green. Again, so this is your PG7, this is a phthalo green. Super intense, almost acidic, very unnatural, crazy, crazy bright. One of the reasons for having a phthalo green or an emerald, I think, is not so much that you ever use it straight. It's in its neutralizing and mixing capabilities. So you get actually really beautiful neutralized violets when you mix your magenta with your emerald. So really, really beautiful mixing color rather than a color I would use straight. Now, where am I? Oh, I've missed one out. Hang on, I'm going to have to get written at the end, but I'll swatch it out now, I guess. I have chromium oxide, which is a PG17, and that's going to be at least semi-opaque, not opaque. Let me see. Are we in view there? So this was one of the first greens I bought. It is it's a convenience landscape green. As we can see, you can get quite deep values with this, but it's definitely semi-opaque to opaque in its mass tone. It does dilute out to a beautiful quite a beautiful green, and as you can see, really useful landscape kind of colour. Right, then on to another convenience green. This one's called Earth Green. This is actually a mixed pigment paint. So this is a PBR7 with a PG17. So this leans a little bit more towards an earthy green. And yes, another really useful convenience green for landscapes. And then on to I love yellow ochre, just one of my absolute favorite, colors. Yes, they're semi-opaque, but they mix beautiful neutralized greens. Really useful, I find, in landscape painting. Now, I'm not sure why when they made the yellow ochre, they added a PY1 to it. PY43 is such a lovely colour on its own. Now, apparently PY1 does have some light fastness issues. I certainly haven't noticed that with my swatches yet, but, it's still going. So next is Mars Brown, PBR6. This is a transparent brown. So this is, I usually like my earth tones a little bit more on the red side, and this is certainly that. So this is a transparent semi-staining. They classify it as granulating. Again, just a lovely earth brown, just to, another useful landscape colour. Now the next one is a black. I do use, because this is a bit of a chuck around urban landscaping kind of a palette, I do have a black, and I think that this is not a bad black to have. It's, I think it's actually slightly warm, like it leans a little bit towards the reds, so, but it dilutes out into quite a useful grey. And then we have a burnt sienna, which is kind of a necessary colour, I think, in all landscape palettes. And this is a lovely example of a PBR7. It's a semi-opaque, slightly staining, granulating, warm earth red. And again, it neutralizes and makes beautiful greys with all of the blues in this palette. So I find this a really useful color. And then a fun, just absolutely, because why not have something completely, because this is a fun palette. This is my let's play, let's have a lot of fun, let's muck around. I have gold for no other reason than I like a bit of shine and sparkle. And you never know when you want to just stick a bit of gold down on the paper, so why not? It dilutes out. It's hard to see. Let me see if once I finish swatching this out a little bit more diluted. Might be able to, might be too wet. We'll pick it up anyway. So they call it a transparent semi-staining, and there's no pigment information. It's not a, look, it's a fun pigment. I haven't done light fastness tests on this particular pigment. So on to our tube paints. So some of these are the same as what I have with the pans, so they're a good comparison. So first one is lemon, so same cool yellow. It's a good yellow for, you know, if you want bright greens, mix as well. So most of the colours that I have that are similar, I don't have too many variations between the colours in the pans to the tubes. Next one is a cadmium yellow medium. So this is classified as an opaque semi-staining, and this is a PY35. So this is the warmer of the yellows. Not a colour that I necessarily use a lot, mostly because it's an opaque, or at least a semi-opaque yellow. It is quite warm. It mixes some beautiful warm oranges. It makes some interesting sort of neutralised greens. Just not necessarily a colour I use normally on my palette. Now this is the Golden Deep, so this is the PO62. So I'd call this a lovely sort of a slightly yellowish orange, fairly classic. This is classified as transparent and moderately staining. On to Cad Red Light. Again, not a colour I normally, you know, I don't really use the Cad colours much in my normal watercolour painting, mostly because of their opacity. So you can see in my self-selected palette, this sort of, I have the Titan Red, which is sort of halfway, I guess, between these two colours. So Cad Red Light, considered an opaque, semi-staining, granulating red. And it has a lot of depth to this colour. You can see it. It's certainly, you know, if you want a warm red, fairly intense, it's a good choice. Now the next one is our Carmine PV19, and this is a fairly classic cool, meaning that it leans slightly towards the blue. So in my self-selected pans, rather than having this PR19, I have a PR122 magenta. Now this Carmine is slightly pinker, I guess, a little bit closer to the red. It does mix beautiful, beautiful, beautiful blues. Sorry, not blues. It mixes beautiful violets. And this really isn't a bad Like if I was choosing another colour to add in my red spectrum, I really wouldn't mind something like this. This is actually quite a useful colour for mixing. Now, I will squeeze out the cerulean. It's the next one on my list. This is just, I'm going to zoom in. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. Oh, other way. Okay, now, I don't know, you can see I've used quite a lot of this tube up, and you should be able to see this. This is, it has a very odd, chunky texture. It's probably the only way I can describe it straight out of the tube. I just don't understand. There is something odd with the binder with this tube of paint. My pan cerulean is lovely. And the other thing is this has an extremely, and as you can see, it's odd, it's chunky, and I've kind of got to really mix it to try and get rid of the chunkiness and work it, really work it. And it is quite a low tinting strength blue, and also its application is not very smooth. Like, this is a very difficult paint to get to paint. Like, if you were trying to do a sky with this, you would just battle. I don't like the consistency out of this tube at all. I don't know what they did to this, because their pan is fine. Right. So, having that little fight, we can see this cerulean blue is a PB35, a semi-opaque, non-staining, granulating colour. Look, it's colour-wise, it's a nice cerulean. It does a lot of what it's meant to do. It's just this particular tube, I don't know if this is normal for White Nights or if this is a particular problem. I'm just going to come back out a little bit now. There we go. But I could not recommend the cerulean in the tube after using this particular one. Right, on to the ultramarine. So one of my favourite blues. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. I love blues. I love all blues. Doesn't matter. I think that this is a good example of an ultramarine. I think it compares fairly favourably with other ultramarines that I own. I don't own ultramarine in the pan from White Nights, so I can't compare it, but it seems to be, it behaves for me in the same way that I would expect an ultramarine from another brand to behave. And we're back. Just had to recharge the battery on my camera. Okay, hopefully I didn't miss out too much. So we're going to continue on with our swatching. The next pigment we're swatching out is, so this is a tube paint from White Nights. It's green, a very straightforward name, I guess. So this is pigment PG8. So this is quite a I might actually be searching out a bit more on this pigment. So this is PG8. It's transparent and staining. it's got a lovely value to it. And I think that it may have a lot of flexibility as a convenient screen within landscapes. It works quite well straight out of the tube. The mass tone is quite lovely and dilutes down quite beautifully as well. Next is Raw Sienna. Now this is Raw Sienna, this is a PY43. I do PY43 as yellow ochre is one of my favourite pigments, and as you saw with the pans, I have a yellow ochre that is a PY43 and PY1. Now this is a little bit more earthy, I guess, so it's considered to be semi-opaque, semi-staining and granulating, and you can see it actually reminds me a little bit of geotype actually with the granulation in this one. So not quite as yellow as a yellow ochre, but quite a lovely earth tone anyway, and with beautiful texture. And then we have Sepia. So this is their neutral in this particular set. So rather than something like a Payne's Grey, they have a Sepia. Now this is a slightly warmer, whereas a Payne's Grey would be a blue tone. This is most definitely on the red spectrum. As we can see, it's considered semi-opaque, semi-staining, and a non-granulating colour. It's a PR102, PR187 and a PBK7. And then the last colour is a lamp black. I'm still not quite sure why black is included in a lot of basic sets. I think black watercolour has a place, but for the majority of beginners I wouldn't really see it as being a particularly important colour to have as part of your palette. So this is lamp black, PBK7, a semi-opaque, staining black. And as you can see, it dilutes out to I guess a coolish grey. And it does look slightly granulating too. Okay, I'm just going to change the focus back a little bit. Let's see if we can see the whole page. Let me just check that. Move that dirty water out the way. Okay, so that's all the colours that I have from the White Nights from St. Petersburg. I think that they're a fabulous brand, particularly for beginners. They are classified as a professional paint. They are very, very convenient price-wise. They have a decent range of basic colours and also convenience colours. I personally love the pans better than the tubes. I think their tube formulations, given the problems that I've experienced with the cerulean, there's possibly a little bit of variation that I'm not finding with the pans. Also, even though price per mil, it's more economical to buy a tube of paint usually, one of the advantages with pans is that they are a lower overall price, particularly if you're just experimenting and you want to try something. So consider buying a pan of a colour that you're not sure if it will work in your palette, and that's a good way of testing it out. And then later, if you do like it, certainly upgrade to tube paints. But on the whole, I love my St. Petersburg White Nights paints. I think they're an excellent entry point for beginners into watercolours. They have generally great pigment load. They generally don't get in your way in that because they have honey in a binder, they're easy to re-wet. You get a good range of different colours available, and they behave quite well. And honestly, nothing wrong with starting here. If it gets you painting, use them. So that's my little swatch out of White Nights paints. If you've got experience with White Nights, let me know if you like them. If you've had any of those issues with the variation between the tubes versus the pans, let me know. Is my experience a one-off, or is this a known problem? Let me know. Feel free to send me a comment, like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye.